that are moving into, you're on the precipice, if you will, of establishing your careers, your lives, and so what happens there is you guys are in the process of learning, right? And so the whole point here is we want to learn both from a material and spiritual perspective, because why? Because the end result is you want happiness, right? Isn't that what you guys are doing? You think that if you have a good career that you're gonna have happiness, correct? Right? So what guys my age realize is once you, absolutely, there's a certain level of material possessions you have to have in order to feel secure and be happy to a certain extent. But then there's the other piece to it too, is you guys have ever heard, obviously you've heard of it, material possessions not necessarily provide happiness, right? Money doesn't buy you happiness necessarily. And so that's the piece that we're talking about here. This is why you guys came here. And I'm so thankful that you guys did, because when I was your guys' age, I didn't put any merit into, outside of material things, what would make me happy. Hey, if I had a pretty wife, I made some money, had a good some good boys, I'm happy. I realize that's not necessarily what makes me happy. It's actually very empty inside when you get to that level. We talked about midlife crisis. You guys know what midlife crisis is? Who knows what the definition of midlife crisis is? Have you heard of that term? What do you think it is?
It's when your bubble breaks. I mean, all the things that you think that what is life, that just breaks and the reality starts to come in.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. So we're conditioned and programmed by society, by our parents, peers, that if we follow this path of getting great grades, being polite and nice, and we work really hard, we get a really good job, get a really good career, have the family, all those things we were talking about, that will provide you happiness. When you get to about mid-career, you realize, at least, let's just put it this way, you start asking the question, is like, wait a minute, is there more to life than what I have been told and what I've been working towards? And that's where the midlife crisis comes, when you start asking those questions of, who the heck am I? And why am I not happy after I followed the script for happiness? That's a midlife crisis, right? People do all kinds of crazy things when the midlife crisis. What you hope that they do at that time to say, okay, who the heck am I? And that starts their journey into spiritual life, right? But it's an accidental moment in midlife of people who follow the script of material success, and then they realize that it doesn't bring the happiness that they thought it would. That's midlife crisis, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid that, right? And so Krishna talks about this, how to do this, is, so go ahead and do what you're going to do, but he's going to equip us with the tools necessary for us to not get entangled in the world, and at the same time that we're materially becoming successful, we are feeding our spiritual life. So when we get to that midlife area, we're not, it's a slow process to understanding what the next stage is, instead of, oh my God, now what? Because I feel empty inside, right? So that's that piece. Okay, so another thing, part of karma yoga in Krishna consciousness is the three doers. And I know this is probably a subject matter, it's hard for me to kind of explain, so I'll require your feedback on this. So the concept is this. Remember I told you that you're not necessarily going to do, you're not the doer, so you can't necessarily take the blame. Just do the work and don't worry about the outcome type of thing. So who is the doer? I mean, I'll tell you, the Western world will tell you you can accomplish anything if you put your mind to it and work hard at it. Right? That's the script. And to a certain extent, it's true, right? If you work hard at something, you're going to get some sort of a good result, right? There's nothing wrong with that. it's not contradictory necessarily if we look at it from a perspective, right? So the individual soul, which is us, we have a desire. Our souls have a desire. We're based on our past life and karma, we are conditioned a certain way and we have certain desires. So when we want to do something, it comes from within us. That's the me part. Okay? Now, if you can believe me or not, the second part of that is the super soul. What is the super soul? So who's had an intuition before? Or is like, you know what? I've got this feeling. You guys all experienced that? Yeah? So you're like, I can't explain it, but I just know it in my heart. Okay? That's the super soul. What's the super soul? People can call it God, right? That's within us, right? Or you can say super soul. There's something greater. There's an energy that's guiding me. That's the second part of the trifecta of who does things. And then the third is material nature. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So when we have a desire as individuals, our super soul helps us to manifest that desire. How does he help us? Through material nature. So arranging the nature in the material world so that your desire can be fulfilled. Okay, pretty deep concept here, right? So what does this mean and how is this applicable, really, right? So what this is saying is, whatever we want, remember that person that worked all their life, super duper successful materially, is 55 years old, and he's like, wait a minute, what happened? Well, that's what he wanted. God helped him by arranging the material nature in such a way that his hard work will manifest itself in his goals, in his desires. Does that make sense? So God will help us get what we want. Okay? The question becomes, what do we want? Because that's scary, right? If I told you today's class we're going to talk about you get to have anything you want, that's the loaded question. What is it that you truly want? And so that's why I love talking to a group like this, because you're in your lives are trying to figure out what is it that you truly, truly want. Right? So this is the time to ask these questions of yourselves. What is it that I want? Okay, because I used to be like, okay, this God business is good, but I'm not giving up my pursuits of my material, like the things that I want to do. And what I'm trying to tell you is when you really study the Bhagavad Gita, it's saying that they're very compatible. Okay? And as we progress with understanding who we truly are, not only do they come together, I mean, you flourish. You literally flourish. You become extremely, extremely happy because you see the world for what it actually truly is and not what we're necessarily been programmed to think, right? Okay, cool. All right, so 3 doers. Did I explain that right? Did everybody understand that? Rasa, I was so bad in the car. Okay, equal vision. So another symptom of having the right perspective is we start to see everybody, all living beings, equally. Why? Number 1 question in spirituality. What's the first question that needs to be asked? Can anybody?
Like every living being has a soul, whether we're humans or animals or anything. As long as we're living, we have a soul.
Exactly. We're individual souls, right? We are not this body. So the biggest problem is that we identify with this body, and so there's a reason that we all pursue material happiness, because it helps to meet the needs of our body. That's literally what that is, right? So the first question, or the first point of moving in spirituality is, I'm not the body, I'm a soul. my body will die, but the soul will carry on like it has in the past, right? So if we have that concept, correct, then we need to understand, all right, so then how do we help this soul, how do we get this soul, how do we nourish the soul, if you will? Okay, that's through spirituality, right? So equal vision is, if we all understand we're individual souls, that means every living entity is a soul. That means we should look at every living entity equally. So why are we vegetarians, or like Indians? Most Indians are vegetarian. Hindus. Why? Is because of this concept. We believe that every life has a soul, and so why would we hurt a soul? That's why I'm a vegetarian, right? It's really simple for me. Like, people ask, is it a lifestyle? No, lifestyle is good to be a vegetarian because it's innate in us. But the bottom line is, if everything is a living soul, why would I want to hurt something that's living? Okay, so that's the concept here. So, what are some practical things that happens when you start to view people as with an equal vision, or that everything is a soul? Racism is not even a concept that you can even get your mind around, because if you, it's just a body. That's not who we are. We're the soul inside, right? So naturally, you can't look at a bodily concept and start looking at race to divide to differentiate each other from, right? So that's kind of the byproduct, if you will, as you work your actions in Krishna consciousness, if you will, Karma Yoga. Okay. Now we're at chapter 6. Okay, Dhyana Yoga. So now Krishna goes in. So this is what's happening. So they're at the battlefield. Arjun is like, oh my God, I don't want to fight. Krishna is like, okay, you don't understand the true concept, because he's just looking at it from the bodily concept of that I'm going to kill all my relatives. But when you understand that everybody is a soul, Krishna explains it to him that even if they die, they're going to live. They are truly not going to die because they're a soul. So you have to go ahead and do your duty and fight. Okay? Then Arjun starts to ask more questions related to that, right? And Krishna starts to explain the different paths, if you will, for your questions to be answered in life, if you will, in the battlefield of your own life, right? And so we come to chapter 6, which is called Dhyana Yoga, and Krishna explains, in order to, one of the ways that you can advance in spirituality is through meditation, and that's what Dhyana Yoga means, meditation. So if we fix our mind on, our mind is very hard for us to control, and one of the first things we have to do when we start this journey is we got to control this mind. Have you heard the verse, or have you heard that the mind can be your enemy or your friend, type thing, right? And so what does that mean? Ashtanga Yoga is a very strict discipline, focused. It helps us to discipline our mind, right? Requires many years, Krishna explains. And Arjun, as he's explaining these things, kind of like what your parents probably told you about spirituality, and you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous, this is too much work, right? And so Arjun says, this practice seems so impractical and undoable for me. This is just, he basically says, one of the famous lines is, to discipline the mind is like controlling the wind. It's impossible, right? But that said, controlling the mind is essential for spiritual growth. So we have this dilemma. What do we do? Like, the mind is the first step into. Remember, I was talking about how materially we're going to make progress, spiritually make progress. Okay, now Krishna is telling him, hey, spiritually process, control your mind. What does that mean? Right? So, like, have you ever tried to say, okay, you know what? I am staying away from social media today. I'm taking a social media break. How many of you have done that? Ever? Like, one? Yeah, right? How hard is that? It's really hard. And that's like an example of trying to control our mind. Our mind wants to go grab that phone, right? So controlling the mind is really hard. But it's the essential thing that we need to do. And so one of the most beautiful verses out of the Bhagavad Gita is, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Okay, so that's pretty powerful, right? And so the rest of the Gita is about how to control the mind as the first step, and more importantly, how do we develop our spirituality along the way, right? So that's what chapter 6 goes into. And Ashtanga Yoga is controlling the mind through meditation. Okay? So as Krishna is explaining this to him, Arjuna asks, well, what happens if I start on this path, like you guys are all thinking, and it's too hard? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go back to doing what I was doing. What happens? And then, and Krishna actually tells him, is like, if you're sincere, you'll just carry on in your next lifetime where you left out now. So there's hope for people like us who, start on this journey and may abort for whatever reason, right? For whatever reason. And family obligations take over. We don't know what the future holds, right? But rest assured, whatever is happening, you guys sitting in this room right now, hey, you guys are interested. You're sincere. That's all Krishna wants to know, is if you're sincere. And whatever you do, sitting in it for an hour listening, hearing, you're actually practicing spirituality. Okay? So, if you don't come next week, you'll just pick up in your next life. Okay. Where are we at here? Okay.
Is it possible to pick up later in the life?
What's that?
Is it possible to pick up later in the life?
Absolutely. You can start and stop all you want. Ideally you don't want to. I mean, you understand, like, if you start, well, let me ask you a question. If you take a class, can you drop your class and take it again? Sure. They won't let you start at the same spot, though, right? But Krishna says, here in spiritual life, you do. None of it's wasted. Not
Should
even.
I start from 101 again? I'll drop the class and start from 101 again.
What's that?
Let us say I drop the class, and later when I take it up, should I start from 101 again, right from the basics?
Yeah, I mean, you probably be ahead of that, right? Even though that you didn't do well in it, you still know your material really well, and you'll advance fast enough, right? Okay, so it is determined by Arjuna that, and confirmed by Krishna, that although Dhyana Yoga is a bona fide spiritual process for enlightenment, it is difficult to complete the spiritual journey on this path. Why? Let's get into that a little bit. Why is that concluded? Because I fast-forwarded through probably 15 verses. The reason is, in order to really follow the meditative process for it to get, for it to work properly, you have to be very austere. You've got your diet has to be very minimal. You have to be a celibate. You have to be in a secluded place, and you have to literally sit there in an erect posture and meditate on the God or Paramatma within, God within. That's the process. Can it be done? Absolutely. Is it very difficult? Yes. So the conclusion on this. Before we get to the conclusion, so Krishna basically says is whatever yoga practice that you're doing, whatever process that you are, whatever religion, you can actually put religion into that as well. Whether you're Christian, Muslim, you're practicing meditation, you're practicing yoga asanas, whatever that is, the ultimate goal is to become God conscious. If your ultimate goal is not to become God conscious through these different various ways, then you're missing the point, and actually all your efforts are in vain. Okay, so that's the biggest takeaway there. Here we go. This is the conclusion. That is. Oh, this is the verse, huh, Ankit, that you put in there? Okay, so this basically lays out the first six chapters, and it just puts it in hierarchical order of what is better than the previous, right? So basically, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the etheric, and greater than the fruitive worker, right? If you just work for yourself, for your own enjoyment necessarily or your own material gain, we already established that you're going to miss out on some spiritual development along the way, right? Therefore, Arjuna, become a yogi who always abides in me with great faith, worship me in transcendental loving service, is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. So basically what he's saying is, make sure you're trying to become God conscious. In whatever yoga that you decide to do, you're trying to become God conscious. Okay? Okay. And yoga, linking with the Supreme, is thus superior to tapasya, fruitive work, which is karma, and jnana. And all the paths of yoga all these paths, bhakti yoga, or loving devotional service to Krishna, is the highest. Who knows what bhakti yoga is? Yeah?
It's loving devotional service to Krishna.
Okay. What does that mean?
Always remembering and engaging in different activities revolved around Krishna. So for example, we may say that we want to work to get a car that's materialistically for us, but if we incorporate Bhakti Yoga into that, we want to get a car so that we can use it to go to temples to serve Krishna. So that's how you incorporate Bhakti Yoga.
Mhm.
So just basically putting Krishna in the center of everything you do.
Okay. Another? Yep. Perfect. Anybody else? Define bhakti yoga. So we define Ashtanga yoga as the eightfold system, with dhyana yoga being meditation within it, right? We define karma yoga being doing things not just for ourselves, but having a bigger, larger consciousness and make sure that the fruits of it goes to God, right? So bhakti yoga, or devotional service, is how do we, in our day-to-day activities, link everything with God? How do we link that? How do we, without having to manufacture things, right? How do we do that? And why is it easy? Is it hard? Because we just got learned that meditation's super hard, right? It's so hard to do because you have to have these. So what are the qualifications? And that's what we're going to get into. Why is Krishna saying bhakti yoga is the highest? Because it's the easiest. That's one, right? And it's something that gives you pleasure while you're doing it, right? So that's what we're going to get into next. So basically, chapter 6, to summarize it, was talking about the meditative process to find liberation or become God conscious. And Krishna says, yes, you can absolutely do this. Here's the process. And Arjuna's like, oh my God, that's too hard for me. So what's next? And he says, Bhakti Yoga is next. So in this book, or in this song, in this play, if you will, we all face existential times or periods in our life when we start to question what's our next path. And so these questions that we have is what Arjuna is asking Krishna, and Krishna is laying out those answers to those questions. And so if we can apply it. And so I think everybody have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So try to read it on your own, because it's hard to cover like 50, 60 verses of a chapter in one sitting. But basically, if you look at it, the best way to do it is, Arjuna's not convinced that he should do his duty as a warrior and fight, because it's hard, And basically, Krishna's answer is, you should do your duty, whatever you're designed to do. If your inclination is to be a scientist, well, be a scientist, darn it. But just do it with the right consciousness. Okay? Don't try to mix spirituality and what is other words, humanity and being kind. No. Those are all good things. But if you are a soldier, you got to be a soldier. You're never going to be happy, doing social work. You're a soldier. So we all have certain dispositions, and what Krishna is really saying is, your actions should be in line with those dispositions. It's called dharma, right? So there's two kinds of dharma: a material dharma and a spiritual dharma, which is what Krishna is going to get into. And that's why this book is so beautiful. Is because it says, whoever you are, you're an individual, but Krishna is going to help you realize your full potential in that individual. Does that make sense? So you don't have to give up your dreams and your hopes, materially speaking. You just have to align them with the laws of nature. Is really how it's set up. And those laws of nature, and Krishna will explain it to you, he's the one who built them. So he's giving you a bold blueprint of how to truly succeed in life. And if we don't follow it, there's going to be some challenges for us along the ways that we'll face these moments in our lives. And so you may not follow it now, but that's okay. When you do face that challenge, hopefully you'll remember that. Like if my children, like if I try to tell them something like along these lines, it's hard for them to grasp because they haven't faced some of these challenges in life yet, right? But when that time will come, because it surely will come in your life. It doesn't have to be a bad situation. It just may be a situation where you were like, okay, hold on a second here, time out. And then this is when it becomes really relevant for you. Okay? So, any questions or anybody want to add anything? No? Dhyana Yoga, everybody understand the meditative process? You see a lot of the people from India, like you guys see like a lot of the mystics and yogis in the Himalayan mountains, and this is their process. This is their process. And some of them are like they have super powers, if you will. Like literally. And that's done through this process, if you will. Yeah.
So all the other forms of yoga are, at a higher level, and we may not be able to accomplish it here. So Krishna suggested Bhakti Yoga because it's the easiest, right?
Yeah.
So what exactly do we need to do in Bhakti Yoga to, the process of it?
Yeah, we're going to get into it. So this is so we're done with chapter 6, and how many chapters are there? There's 18 chapters. So the rest of the time, basically, Krishna goes into what is it that we have to do. And it was so funny. It's basically, connecting our day-to-day lives with Krishna, really. It's just, first of all, the first thing is starting with the fact that we're not a body, we're a soul. Okay, so if we're a soul, what does the soul need nourishing to get prepared? And Krishna lays it out, like little by little, exactly what we need to do in order to satisfy that. So, and there's people that are here that are practitioners of Bhakti Yoga. So we have, a lot of information that we want to share with you guys in terms of questions of why are we here? Why do we want to share this with you? I certainly don't get anything in return for it personally, right? So why do we do that, right? It's because it makes us happy. And so when you genuinely feel happy, you want to share that happiness, right? Especially if you felt sad before, right? And then you found a way, something that makes you happy. Just like you guys would share with your colleagues that, hey, you don't want to take this class, this teacher's horrific, like, no way, don't do it. But if you figured out how to, if somebody's a good one, you share that and say, so we're helping each other, right? And so humanity, when you realize that, hey, there's a path that's pretty, it's a good path and makes us happy, that's what you want to share it, right? So, cool. Any other questions? So that's literally, I don't know if this is going to be done this chapter, this semester, but through next semester, I think Yashodananda's plan is to, cover all the aspects of Bhakti. Anybody else? Any other questions? Ankit? Rasa? Okay. So I guess we'll finish with a little bit of kirtan for like 5 minutes, and then, what? longer, a little bit longer, okay, 5-10 minutes. And then we'll have breakfast, or I mean dinner. Yeah. Cool? All right.